What do you think is the curse of our age? Another way of asking it is, what is the biggest problem with our modern culture? The question is overwhelming and kind of tough to think about, right? Because there are so many possible answers. We could say the lack of truth, or the prevalence of relativism, or addiction, or consumerism, or secularism, or a whole host of other things that could be the reason. But as a father of two very young children, I've been thinking about this question a lot. And it's hard not to be concerned about the world that my little boy and my little girl are going to grow up in. Interestingly, the gospel passage that we're focusing on today, it provides an answer and a solution that are strongly worth considering. This gospel suggests that the curse of our age is potentially superficiality. People living inauthentic lives that are barely touching the surface of who they could be. And the solution is living deeply. As Jesus puts it, casting the net of your life into the deepest waters. The kind of waters that require courage and resilience, responsibility and meaning, heroic kindness and goodness, faith and love. There's nothing more attractive on this earth than a person living out the deep waters of life. Let me give you an example. Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he captivated people from every walk of life. It didn't matter your race, your creed, your income, where you lived, what your occupation was, nothing. There was something about him, a presence, a kindness, an unexplainable depth to him that just seemingly brought out the best in everyone around him. I have a favorite Mr. Rogers story, and it features a little boy with cerebral palsy, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. One day, this little boy heard a preacher say that God created all things, and since this little boy considered himself a burden who really couldn't do anything for himself, the little boy concluded that God must hate him for creating him so useless. So the boy started self-harming, hitting himself whenever he recognized the burden that he placed on others. The only thing that would calm him down when he started self-harming was watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So one day, the little boy's mother arranged for him to meet Fred Rogers on the set of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Moments before he was to meet his hero, Mr. Rogers, the little boy, he had a thought. He thought, Mr. Rogers is such a good man. He must be so close to God. And if he is so close to God, then I am completely unworthy to be in his presence. So the boy started hitting himself. Then out walks Fred Rogers. He had no idea what he was walking into. He had no idea when he got up that morning that he would be meeting a little boy whose entire life trajectory appeared to be riding on this one encounter with him. Mr. Rogers walks up to the little boy, and he bends down to be eye level with him. And he says, "Little boy, will you do me a favor?" "Yes, Mr. Rogers. Anything for you." "Little boy, will you pray for me?" Later that day, the little boy had another realization. If Mr. Rogers was such a good man and so close to God, and he thought the boy was worth something, then maybe God did too. And the little boy stopped self-harming. Years later, when the story reached a reporter, he asked Mr. Rogers how he knew that this was the perfect thing to say to that little boy. Fred Rogers simply responded by saying, "I didn't. I just know that someone so young, asked to suffer so much, must be so close to God, and I could use his prayers." That's the fruit of deep living. And that kind of deep living gave God the space to do astounding things in and through and with Fred Rogers. The thing about deep living, though, doesn't happen by accident. Today's gospel is an amazing one, and it gives a wonderful formula for deep living. Step 1, press in on Jesus. Press in on him. Get into the classroom of silence every day and talk with your God. Talk with your God in whom you live and breathe and have life in. 2, listen to the word of God. Get passionately curious about the life and teaching of Jesus. 3, be like Peter. Have the courage of Peter. Share your doubts, your misgivings about being worthy of living a deep life, about following Jesus, about living up to the unique call he has for you. Lay it all out there and give Jesus the space to respond. And finally, 4, have the courage to put your misgivings aside, take Jesus at his word, and accept his invitation to adventure by following him as closely as you possibly can into the deep waters of your life.